Alright, so I wanted to kind of make this video to talk about some of the things that are going on right now. Like some weird stuff. I wanted to kind of touch on my last video that I released. I wanted to talk about Bill Gates and his foundation and CHAZ. That was weird. So the first thing, my video I released was called Stop Saying Black Lives Matter. Probably should have been a little bit better with that video and how I made it. I should have definitely used a little more tact, a little more nuance with that. I don't have a problem with people saying Black Lives Matter. I only think that if you're going to say it, then you need to care in all situations. Stop saying Black Lives Matter like you care. And then turn a blind eye to 300,000 plus babies being murdered every year by abortion. Because if you think that's okay, then you don't actually think Black Lives Matter. If you do care about all that and you want to say Black Lives Matter, I don't have a problem. Because, I know that Black Lives Matter. And that's the other thing. It kind of gives this idea that there's a large population in the US that doesn't think that. That's kind of what they're trying to say. And I think that's wrong. But again, I don't really care if you say it, as long as you actually mean it, and as long as I know that you actually care. Alright, the second thing I want to touch on though is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Because they announced recently that for first people that they're going to give a vaccine to as black people. And their obvious goal was to be like, hey, look at us. We're so good. We support racial equity. But that's complete bull. They've been going to Africa for a long time. They would test their stuff on them. They would test vaccines in Africa. Like they want to do it there because people aren't going to look at it as much. They can do it without people getting mad at them because no one's really paying attention to what goes on in Africa. They're pretty much using people in Africa like human guinea pigs, which is straight up wrong. And they like people see as you're poor and black, you live in Africa, you're still a human. But they don't really care about that. They have this idea that they can just do experiments on people in Africa and no one's going to look. Because they're black, they're poor, they live in low-income countries, so they just use them as guinea pigs. Which is just wrong, right? They are human beings. They're not test subjects. So it's just this racist move, right? Because then if you give it to black people first, you'd be like, well, if it doesn't work, then it's going to be the black people who die. And we know for white people that doesn't work, and we can make our adjustments then, so white people don't die from it. So that's basically what they're doing. Like, these are vaccines that are going to come out. They're going to be virtually untested. They don't have enough time for it. So these vaccines are going to come out. They're going to give it to black people and see what happens. Like, if you don't think that this is some kind of eugenics program, then you're not really paying it that much attention. Because they've been trying eugenics for a while. They've been trying it since late 1800s. Different organizations. Planned Parenthood is a eugenics organization. If you look at its history, their goal was to kill black babies and sterilize black women. And it's in the history. And the founder, Margaret Sanger, has explicitly said before that she wants to kill black babies. She wants to prevent black babies from being born. So, it's a eugenics organization from the very start. But the other thing I want to touch on is CHAZ. If you don't know what's going on in Seattle, some protesters took over 6 blocks of Capitol Hill in Seattle, and named it for Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. It's actually actually pretty hilarious. So we started this autonomous zone. They pretty much just they took it over, but they have no idea what they're doing. They got rid of the police, declared that there are no police, and then replaced it with armed citizens who are threatening to blow people's brains out if they don't comply. Alright? So basically, they went from police who were pretty good police, run by a black police chief, and they switched it up to like a private police that's far more brutal, right? That's communism for you right there. For like free food, they let the homeless people come in, and the homeless people took all their food, which is funny. Then they put out a tweet like, we need some vegan food substitutes, vegan meat substitutes, some oats and soy. So that's hilarious. Like they don't know that you can beat pretty much anything. That's how you know that there's just a bunch of privileged little whiny asses. Because they start their own country and they still expect that to be able to abide under the laws of the US, but they don't want them applied unfairly to them. As in, they want the good stuff from the US laws, but none of the bad stuff. So yeah, complete BS. They don't understand they can eat rats. Rats are edible. Maybe you don't want to eat rats, but you can eat them if you're starving. Other people have tried to make autonomous zones since then. Police are not having it. The mayor is complicit in Seattle. She's like, it's all good and fun, all fun and games. Meanwhile, people are getting raped, they're getting beaten, being assaulted. Like, literally, you don't need to send the National Guard and do it. All you have to do is set up like a perimeter around it where they can't see you. Keep people from coming in, and they'll have to leave eventually when they run out of food. So, yeah. And I would say this, because they're in there, they're destroying businesses. I say the National Guard comes in, they set up a perimeter, don't let anyone in. Once they get tired of it, everyone's arrested, and they have to pay for all the damage that they've done. Because they've damaged businesses, they've looted, they've destroyed stuff, they've burned stuff, just threatening business owners in that area with extortion. So, just set up a perimeter. When they get out, arrest all of them for treason, make them pay back all the damage that they did. Because, yeah. Thank you. So that's what's going on in Seattle. They're trying it in Chicago too. It's not gonna work. Police made block bathrooms, and the police aren't letting anyone in to bring them food. So they're going to have to give up eventually when they starve. So that's not gonna work. Every other autonomous zone has been dismantled almost as quickly as it's begun. Police are not interested in that kind of BS. But so that's basically what's happening right now. Also, as far as I can tell, a lot of the rioting has started to die down in most cities. So that's a good thing. Because that was not helpful. Just like look up organizations that are donating to help rebuild for businesses. There are plenty of organizations that are trying to help the people who've been affected by the riots to rebuild. Brexit is one of those. Habitat for Humanity is probably going to do some stuff too in the cities where there's been a lot of rioting. But just try and donate to the places that help. If you live in a city where people have been affected a lot, find a non-profit that's helping rebuild and just volunteer some time if you can. So that's basically all I have to say right now. It's just, everything's crazy. And here in San Antonio, local elections happen next month, so. And it's probably the same in most of Texas and possibly most of our states in general. So get out and vote, look up all your people, make sure you vote in local elections because those are ones that matter. vote for people who aren't going to stand for rioting, and vote for people who are going to help reform the police, who are going to give more training. Because that's what's most important to dismantle police brutality. It's not to defund them and dismantle them, it's to train them better. Because I've yet to see National Guard abusing people, and I'm sure it's happened, but I'm not seeing it anywhere near as much as with regular police force. And a lot of that's probably because they don't, a lot of that's probably because the National Guard is better trained, and they are trained in close combat as well, and then non-lethal hand-to-hand combat, and lethal too, but they don't need to use that. For military, we police are trained to quell uprisings, or foreign and domestic, that's their job. So they are better trained, so you're not seeing these interactions. The other thing that needs to be looked at too with police is psychiatric help. Because we like to think about veterans, they have their PTSD, we know that happens, but people don't think about police. They don't think about for PTSD that police get. Because police do get PTSD as well. Because especially if you've been in violent encounters, odds are you're more likely to get PTSD. But we ignore the police. We don't treat them right. They need psychological help as well, and we need to be able to make sure that they're okay. Because if you have PTSD, this is why soldiers will go back to war over and over again, because it's the only way that they can cope with it without admitting they have a problem. But when you're a police officer and you have PTSD, you're not going to war. That's not your job. That's why it's easier to be in the military than the police, because in the military, you're going out, you're killing people. That's more or less your job description. But police, your job is to make sure that as many people as possible end up alive. Your job is to save lives, not take them. And if you have PTSD, what are you going to do when you're going out to save lives and you have psychological issues? Because anything could make you snap. It doesn't take a lot to make someone snap when they have psychological issues. And these come from policing. It's not like, before they start with the police, they should get psychological help. Most of them are psychologically sound when they get there. But once they end there, if they have a bad incident, that's going to affect all of their future incidents if they don't get mental help. So we need to focus on funding better training, particularly in close-hand combat. And I said this already, what happened in Atlanta would not have happened if the police had been properly trained in close combat and hand-to-hand combat, because they would have been able to subdue racial. They wouldn't have ever felt that they needed to use lethal force, because they would have handled the situation that the officer. They would have been thrown, because he didn't know how to fight, he was drunk. He was a drunk brawler, a bar fighter, that's all he was. It's not like he was using any kind of special strategies or anything, any skillful combat. So it would have been pretty easy to overpower him with two officers who've been properly trained in close combat. But since they aren't properly trained in that, instead they end up using lethal force. Was it right? No. Was it justified? Probably. And there will be an investigation. But we need to train our police better. And there's a cop from Baltimore who left the force because it was so corrupt, and that police force intentionally targeted minority communities more than white communities, because they knew that's where they could get more drugs. And he left because of that. And he talked about it. He said there are 3,000 police officers in Baltimore, but that job could be done with 1,000 if they were trained better. But police are also overstretched. They have way too many responsibilities. They shouldn't have to deal with everything. Mental health, it shouldn't be their problem. Homelessness, not their problem. possibly a different type of force to they should probably have special teams for um, disputes between neighbors and stuff who are more trained in mediation. This means don't come unarmed. Domestic abuse is called one of the most dangerous for police officers to go to because emotions are running high. There's usually a weapon involved, and no one wants to deal with police in that situation because they're mad at their spouse. They aren't interested in police. Police are just in the way to them. So that is one of the most dangerous calls to go to. But the video is already 16 minutes long, so I'm just going to get off it now. So just try and think about all this stuff. Think about it in more realistic terms. Just because a black man dies from a white cop doesn't make it a racist encounter. So look at all the facts. Just stop assuming things. Assumption is the enemy of reason. Assumption makes bad stuff happen. And that's what you're fighting against. We're fighting against assumption. We're fighting against stereotypes. We're fighting against hatred. We're fighting against discrimination. So just try and think about that more when you think about cases. Don't let your feelings get the best of you because your feelings are always going to lie to you to make you feel whatever they want you to feel. But logic always wins. Train police better. And we need to stop acting like police are some huge corrupt force. We need to reform it at its base. And if there's lots of momentum for that, if you can put that plan forward, you can get liberals and you can get conservatives to agree. So just try and think about that a little more. Think about the best ways to reform police, to increase police involvement in communities. So, have a great rest of your day. Peace out.